Hey, everybody. Brian Beckham here, and I have got Lori Saitz of Zen Rabbit. Lori, how the hell are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, like I said in the introduction, there's a number of different things that you do professionally that I've had a huge interest in for, going on 10, 15 years now. Number one is your interest in meditation and mindfulness and things like that. So I want to talk quite a bit about that, if you don't mind, during the podcast. But before we get into your company and what you do and things like that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, who is Lori Saitz? Where are you from? And how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I was born and raised in New Jersey, but don't tell anyone. I got out as soon as I could.
And I thought it was supposed to be pronounced New Jersey.
No. You hear no accent here. At least not New Jersey accent. No.
Yeah.
So I came to school down in Washington, D.C., and I just love this city. This is where I live. I live in Virginia, on the Virginia side, right outside of DC now. And I've been here. I left for 15 years during my marriage, came back, been back for 11 years. Like, this is home to me. So yes, I was raised in New Jersey, but Virginia is home. My grandma grew up in Southern Virginia. My roots are here.
Nice.
Yeah. So went to school in DC and spent a good part of my professional career as a marketer.
Nice. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. What is Zen Rabbit? What do you do? And how did you get into that business?
Yeah. Well, so in 2003, I started my first business. Went out and did my entrepreneurial thing, started a business that was called Zen Rabbit Baking Company. Yeah. And in the baking company, I was making and marketing a product called the Gratitude Cookie.
Yeah.
Which was based on a family recipe, kind of a cross between a butter and a sugar cookie. And because I'm a marketer, it wasn't my goal to be the next Mrs. Fields. It was my goal to create a tool for businesses to say thank you to their clients and to people who sent them referrals. And so that's how I produced this product. And, it's really challenging manufacturing a food product with no preservatives and shipping it all over the world.
Yeah.
Challenging. Yeah. I couldn't quite scale it the way I wanted to, so I shut it down in 2014. So I ran that business for 11 years. And at the same time, my mom was diagnosed with an acute form of leukemia and passed away 6 weeks later. So it was during that time that I kind of reevaluated, like, all right, what do I want to do with my life now? And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more later, but that's, just reevaluating now, what do I want to do? And eventually coming to this, to what I'm doing now, which is teaching the world. I'm on a mission to teach the world to be calm and grounded, no matter what is going on around them.
Nice. That brings to mind my grandmother, who has passed away, probably 10 years ago. She used to have a little picture in the downstairs restroom. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. It was a picture of a duck paddling on the water, and it said, "Be like a duck, calm and unruffled on the surface, but paddling furiously underneath." So that kind of brings that to mind. But let me talk to you. I'll tell you, it's interesting because from a marketing perspective, so I've run my own business for going on 20 years now, a law firm, and I had to learn how to market so I could get clients and make money. And so I've studied marketing. God, I bet you I've read hundreds of marketing books. I've been members of different mastermind groups, and you name it, I've done it. And it's so interesting you mentioned the cookie company, because one of the things I mentor young lawyers now and teach them how to market. And one of the things I say is I literally use a cookie company as an example. And what I say is, look, you may have the best cookies in the world. Your cookies may be incredible and they may beat everybody's, but if you can't market them, you'll go out of business. Whereas if you have an average cookie, but you're a great marketer, you're going to do great. And so, and the reason I use that example is because I try to illustrate a couple things to the younger people I mentor. Number one is the importance of marketing. And number two is how marketing is kind of the same across the board. No matter what business you're in, you have a product or a service, and you're trying to tell a story about it and convince people to buy it. So tell us about what it was like running a cookie company. Like, what was the marketing pitch? Like, how did you learn how to do all that stuff?
Yeah, I've studied marketing too, and I'm willing to bet we have had some of the same mentors and teachers.
I'll bet we have. Yeah.
Like as you were talking, I was thinking Dan Kennedy.
Dan Kennedy, yes, of course.
Right.
Dan Kennedy.
So, and Dan Kennedy used to always say, he probably still says it, is that your business is no different. Like that's everybody's right. Like, oh, but yeah. My business is different. I can't do that because my business is no, your business is no different. Yeah. I mean, the principles of marketing apply to every business in the same way.
That's right. 100%. And you know, it's so funny you say that, Lori, because I literally almost said, every time somebody says my business is different, I think of Dan Kennedy. So, and actually the one interesting thing about that, so for everybody that doesn't know, Dan Kennedy is basically the teacher of the teachers of marketing. He has been around for a very, very long time. He teaches a lot of direct marketing and stuff, but basically he just teaches the principles of how to sell things. And Lori, I'm sure you've read and subscribed to all this stuff. I have too for a very, very long time. But then one of Dan's students, Lori, a guy named Ben Glass, who is a lawyer in Virginia.
I know Ben. I know Ben. I've been to his office. World. We've had lunch together.
What a small world. So Ben and I are good friends. Ben started a marketing company for lawyers based on the Dan Kennedy principles.
Yes.
I had been reading Dan Kennedy. And so somehow I got Ben's advertisement for his business, Great Legal Marketing, early on, and Ben and I have known each other forever, and so what a small world.
That's crazy.
Tell Ben I said hi.
Yeah, I haven't been in touch with him in years, but yeah.
I'll email him and I'll tell him I had you on my. Matter of fact, he follows me on my social media pages. So, but Ben had, and this is getting back to the podcast topics a little bit. We were talking about marketing and stuff. One of the things, maybe the most important thing Ben taught me was when you're sitting down to decide whether you own a business or whether you're working for a business, the thing you should do, what most people do is they design their life around their business, right? And so Ben flipped that on its head for me. Ben said you need to design your life first. Like, what do you want your life to look like? Mm-hmm. And then design your business around that to serve. Your business should serve you, not Absolutely. The other way around. So, yeah. And Ben has had I've said this publicly and repeatedly, of the top 5 or 6 people in my life who I consider mentors, Ben is clearly in the top 5 or 6. So, but small world. So talk a little bit more about like you're marketing cookies, you're marketing a product. Like how do you do that effectively?
Yeah, well, it was a lot of trial and error. It was being part of that Dan Kennedy world and learning from those guys, how do you write copy that relates to people, that tells a story that that resonates with people. Yeah. So that they feel like you're talking, first of all, directly to them and you totally get what's going on in their head. Yeah. What ended up happening, it took me a while to figure out who is my ideal client. Because again, you go to marketing and people typically are like, well, everyone can use what I have to offer. No, not everyone. Right. Narrow it down. Everyone is not your client. When you say everyone is your client, then that means no one is your client. And so getting to really who was my ideal client. And that was people in financial services, primarily financial advisors were really great clients for me, and commercial insurance people, because the lifetime value of a client is high in those industries. Yeah. So it made the most sense for them to build relationships so that they could keep those clients for longer. Yeah. And that's another thing that a lot of people who are in business don't understand is they don't even know what a lifetime value of a client is. When you ask them, what's the lifetime value of a client? Well, it depends what they buy. Okay, average. What is the life? And so when I was selling the cookies, those 11 years, I was doing a lot of presentations on using gratitude for differentiating your business.
Nice.
How do you say thank you as a differentiating factor? Because so few people do it. People just assume that their clients, I'm doing the job they hired me to do. Of course they know I appreciate them.
Yeah.
No, they don't. And so it's important to share it. But one of the things I used to talk about was, what is the lifetime value of a client and how do you figure it out?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know the lifetime value of a client, then how do you know how much you can spend, you can afford to spend to get a client in the first place?
Yeah. So give us some tips on figuring that out. And before you do that, I'll say the other thing that Dan wrote a book. I think this is, he has this whole series of books called the No BS. It's gonna be like No BS marketing guide, No BS business.
Right over here on the shelf.
That's like his trademark. But he has one book, I forget which book it's in, but again, a huge influence on me. Not only the value of your clients, but the value, your value, like what your value is. And so he has this exercise, you probably know about this, Lori, but I'll talk about it a little bit for the listeners, where he says at the beginning of one of his books, you need to figure out how much money you want to make a year, how many hours in the year you want to work, divide those numbers, and that will give you the average value of an hour of your time. And it's a lot higher for most people than they probably realize. Like the value of the quote value of my time when I did this many years ago was a couple $1,000s an hour. And so the idea is not that you're going to charge that much money. It's that's the value to you of your time based on your goals. And so what's great about that exercise is if say, let's say the value of an hour of your time is $1,000 and you get a bunch of stuff that's just kind of little rinky dink stuff, you'll very quickly realize that a lot of your time is wasted, or you're not using your time efficiently. So talk a little bit about both valuing your own time and valuing like the customers, like the lifetime value of customers.
Yeah. Well, valuing your own time is what you're talking about. So if you have a whole bunch of administrative tasks to do and you could pay somebody $25 an hour to do them and your time is worth $1,000 an hour, you are going to, like you said, quickly realize that you should not be spending your time on doing that, and that you should hire out for that. And that's part of the reason to figure that out. The other thing is I'm not a big fan of charging per hour. So I like, if you're going to price something out for a client, give them a package so that they can't really necessarily figure out how much it costs you per hour. But you, like you said, you should know for your own knowledge how much.
For sure.
Yeah. And then as far as the lifetime value of a client, the way that I typically was teaching people to figure this out was, okay, so again, we're talking average. How much does somebody spend with you when they get there? Let's say you have a service, digital marketing service. And so you have clients who pay you a monthly retainer. Let's just, for the ease of numbers, say $1,000 a month. Yeah. And they sign a 12-month contract with you. So now that's $12,000. And they typically stay with you for 3 years. So $36,000. Add into that now, how many referrals do you typically get from a client? Yeah. So let's say you get two referrals and they're worth just as much. Each one of those is worth $36,000. So now that one client is worth 36,000 times 3. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what that is. I'm terrible at math. 36. It's over 90,000. It's over like 100,000.
Yeah. By the way, I'm an engineer and I couldn't add that up.
Well, what? 36 and 36 is 70.
6 times 3 is 18, 3, so 108, maybe something like that.
Yeah. All right. So it's over 100,000.
Over 100,000. Yeah. It's a lot of money.
So it's a lot of money. That's the average lifetime value. Sure. Some of your clients are going to be worth less. Some are going to be worth more. Yep. If that's the average lifetime value of a client, and this is the Dan Kennedy thing, how much money can you now spend to get a client? Because if you can spend more than the next guy to get a client, most people are thinking, what's the least amount of money I can spend to get a client?
Yeah.
If you're thinking what's the most I can spend to get a client, you're going to get a better quality client and you're going to beat your competition.
Yeah. And that's just one of many, for people listen, one of many really profound insights that Dan Kennedy and his whole group, they flip a lot of things on the head. And, I'll tell you another thing, Lori, for the business owners out there that Ben and Dan both taught me was the value of your list or your herd. And so one of the things that Ben talks about a lot, so does Dan, it normally costs X dollars to acquire a new client. Whereas once you've acquired that client should be a client for life. Oh, wait, I'm a personal injury lawyer. People only come to us once. Nonsense, right? Once you get a client, whether it's a cookie company, a financial services company, a law firm, an engineer, you name it, doesn't matter what business it is. You want to keep them engaged. Like you want to have them be part of your group. You want to be basically the leader of a tribe where if they have, for instance, in my business, one of my goals is once somebody reaches out to me, whether they become a client or not, for the rest of their lives, if they have a legal issue, I want them to think of me first. And what's so cool about that, Lori, among many other things, is it allows smaller businesses with smaller budgets to compete with the big boys. Because, there's law firms in Houston that literally spend more than $1 million a month on marketing. But none of the people that have been my clients will even consider those firms because I'm their lawyer. Because I on a monthly basis, I reach out to people. So talk a little bit about like building your tribe or your herd or whatever phrase you want to use.
Yeah, this is relationship marketing. This is exactly what we're talking about, building a relationship with people. And that's what I was doing with the gratitude cookies, was helping my clients build relationships to show appreciation, to say thank you. Not only to say to say thank you, and also to keep people, to extend the lifetime value of a client. Because I had a client in my program. So I had a continuity program, a monthly program that people would subscribe to, and then they would get a certain number of boxes of cookies every month sent to whomever they wanted to. And he sold newsletters, and I don't remember exactly the numbers, but let's say the average lifetime value of a client for him was 12 months. At about 8 months, he would send them a box of cookies and say, "Hey, I really appreciate having you as a client.
Yeah.
I really enjoy working with you. Appreciate your being a part of my tribe." So at 8 months, they're starting to think, well, I don't know. Do I need this newsletter? I've been a subscriber for a year to this program. Do I need to continue this? But now he sent them a box of cookies, and the law of reciprocity kicked in.
Reciprocity. That's what I was about to say. The law of reciprocity.
And they were like, well, I can't quit now. He just sent me a great box of cookies. And so they would stay on for like another 6 months or something like that. Anyway, he extended the lifetime value of his clients by like 50% by doing this. And another client who would send them at the beginning, before they were even a client, it was part of his business development efforts, that he would send them a proposal, because the work that he was doing was pretty expensive. It was home repairs. And he would send them a whole proposal, and I would send a box of cookies with a letter that said, "Hey, I know you need to take some time to look over this proposal. So why don't you sit down with this box of cookies and get yourself a nice glass of milk and read through." Okay. So now they haven't decided they're going to work with him yet. But again, the law of reciprocity says that when somebody does something nice for you, you subconsciously want to repay them.
Yeah.
And so now they're more inclined to say yes to working with him, because he sent him a box of cookies.
Yeah, that's so the law of reciprocity is a well-known psychological phenomena. People use it in marketing a lot, but it's like when you see free samples at the grocery store, that's what they're getting at. Like, and I'm sure everybody's experience is like, for sure I have, I'll take a free sample. Ooh, that was good. I'm going to have a couple extra free samples. And then I walk away and I'm like, man, I feel so bad. I feel like I need to buy that. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah. So, and I'll tell you, again, this marketing thing, one of the things that excites me so much about marketing in general is, to me, marketing makes me a better lawyer, because all marketing is telling stories and
Yeah.
trying to persuade people that the product or service you're offering is worth them separating some of their cash and handing it over to you. And I think that, like, the story and the narrative, creation of story and narratives is, if not the most important tool in somebody's arsenal, certainly one of the top 2 or 3. So talk a little bit about, you mentioned the word gratitude a number of times, and you've also mentioned how gratitude can give you basically a competitive advantage. Can you explain a little more detail, kind of where you're coming from as far as that goes, and what you mean by that?
Absolutely. Again, we live in a society where, you grow up, at least in my family, I was taught to write thank you notes after every, after the birthday, after the holidays, like we had to sit down and write with a pen, write thank you notes. It's, first of all, it's good manners.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's rare these days because so few companies do say thank you. Or if they do, it's like a perfunctory, like, thanks for getting on the call today. Or like, you're leaving a store and they're like, thanks for coming in. Like, they're not even thinking about what they say. But when you genuinely express appreciation for someone, you're, again, building that relationship. Yeah. This is part of relationship marketing. And not a lot of companies do it very well.
Yeah.
So when you do, you stand out. You stand out in your client's mind. You stand out in the marketplace overall. And again, like good karma, it's the right thing to do, but it also has a ROI attached to it. So it's not just that you're using good manners. People are going to remember that you said thank you and come back to you because they now have this relationship built with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of implied something that I think is fairly important there. And that is, there's a lot of things that we can do, like, for example, expressing gratitude, not phony gratitude, but authentic gratitude. And some people might say, well, that's manipulative. You're saying thank you and using gratitude in order to get people to do what you want to do. But that's not really the case at all. If you do it authentically, if you truly are grateful for your clients and customers, then it's easy to say thank you. And yes, it is going to result maybe in you getting more deals or more purchases of your product and things like that. But that's okay. I mean, that's the whole point of being in business is to do that, right? And so
exactly.
So,
and if you're not truly grateful for your clients, then you might want to rethink why you're in business or the
100%,
business you're in.
100%. And the other thing I've found, and I've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, is things like gratitude and having a focus on helping other people and not making it all about yourself. From a purely selfish standpoint, when I help other people or when I'm grateful for something, I feel better myself. So,
yes,
you know what I mean? So
that's
even if you're one of those kind of weirdo people that are selfish and don't want to help anybody, you'll probably be not in the best mood. And the second you start expressing gratitude or saying, hey, can I help you, or things like that, it'll just put you in a better mood. So whether you want to do it to sell a product or whether you want to do it just to put yourself in a better mood, I found that being grateful and expressing thanks to people and things like that, it makes me feel better, Lori.
Yeah, right. Exactly. People, it is, there's science and research behind how this works as well.
Yeah.
It makes you feel better. I think it was Wayne Dyer who told a story or presented some research about it. It actually is a triple fold benefit. So you feel good. The person receiving the appreciation feels good. And if there's a third party involved in terms of like watching it, or now people who are listening to us have this conversation, they feel good too.
Yeah.
So it increases and boosts everybody's serotonin and dopamine and all those feel good chemicals.
What is it? Oxytocin. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read this. I read something a couple of weeks ago about how when like, for example, do you have pets?
Can you hear her right now? Yes, I do.
One
I
of
have a
them,
cat.
I actually know what, and one of them's named Karma, right?
Karma passed away
Oh, I'm
almost
sorry.
2 months ago.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry to
Yes.
hear that.
Yes. I know Karma. Right. So
Well,
Karma, Panther. That's why I didn't know if you could hear, but Panther, the one I have still, is howling. She's been howling ever since.
She probably misses mom.
She misses her sister.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if you could hear that right now, but yes, I do have one.
Yeah. So I read this a couple of weeks ago, and this had to do with dogs. I'm sure it's the same with cats, but literally when you like look in your dog's eyes and pet them and stuff, the dog has a measurable increase in oxytocin, which is like the connection hormone.
Yeah.
And so do you. And so like sometimes I'll just grab my dog and rub his ears and kind of look him in the eye, and I'll say, "You're such a good dog. You're such a good dog."
Yeah.
And I can see him getting happier and happier, and then I'm getting happier and happier. And there's no difference between rubbing your dog's ears and metaphorically rubbing somebody else's ears and saying, "Hey, you're a good client. I really like the fact that you're one of my clients. Like, it means a lot to me that you're a client." And then your client's getting happier and you're getting happier, and it's a self-reinforcing loop.
Yes. And then they go out and tell their friends, "Hey, my attorney sent me this, thank you, or a box of cookies," or whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be, it could be as inexpensive as a handwritten note. So the cost of a note card and a stamp, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate.
I'll tell you another thing. So my dad, who's a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel, he likes to go, he's almost 80 now, and he likes to go to the grocery store with $10 gift cards, like just generic gift cards. And he'll just give them to the people at the checkout counter, the bag people. And I said, "Why do you do that?" And he said, "Because it makes me feel good."
Yeah, that's so cool.
I like
love
seeing people
that he does
smile.
that.
Yeah, I like seeing their smile. And so, like you just said, like the even third part, like you and I are smiling right now, just thinking about that, right? And so, gratitude, it's not like, and we're about to start talking about meditation a little bit, and it's the same deal with meditation. I think a lot of people think gratitude, journaling and meditation is a bunch of woo progressive, pie in the sky nonsense. And I want practical, actionable things. And what I'm here to tell you is gratitude and meditation is practical and actionable and has absolutely measurable results. Don't you think, Lori?
I completely agree. In fact, I was just going to say, so again, there is a lot of science and research that has been done on the effects of gratitude. And so for a couple of things, it strengthens the neural pathways in your brain.
Yeah.
We already talked about how it releases those feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. It reduces physical pain. Because when you have those hormones coursing through your body, your physical pain is reduced.
Yep.
It can improve your sleep quality. How many people who are listening want better sleep? That's a common thing. People are like, my sleep isn't very good. Practicing gratitude improves your sleep. It reduces cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and it increases the effectiveness of your immune system.
Yeah,
all of these are measurable benefits that happen when you practice gratitude, and it can ultimately change the way you see yourself, the way you see your world, and the way you see yourself in it, as we've talked about.
Yeah. Well, watch this transition. You ready? I'm going to have the smoothest transition in podcast history. Are you ready for this? All right. Let's talk about meditation. And specifically, I want to talk about a kind of meditation that when I first heard about it, I thought was stupid. It's called in the Buddhist tradition, I think it's called meditation, or loving kindness. People will call it loving kindness, but it's basically meditating with gratitude. Like we're sitting here talking about the power of gratitude. And then if you couple that with the power of meditation, it is so powerful. And so the way I would do it and the way I was taught to do and there's all different sorts of meditation. We're going to talk about some of them here in a second, but is you literally shut your eyes, you breathe for a little bit, you kind of get settled. And then you think of somebody that you have a completely and totally loving and uncomplicated relationship. So for me, it's my 14-year-old daughter.
Mhm.
And I just wish her well. And I have this little thing I say in my head, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, may you live a joyful life. And I just say that. I really strongly wish it on my daughter. And it sounds so woo-woo, but after you do that for a little while, you start feeling better and better. And then you think of somebody completely neutral. So I have different people I think of that you don't have really strong positive or negative feelings for. And you do the exact same thing for them. And then you pick out somebody you cannot stand. So
Someone you have a challenging relationship with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I literally have found myself meditating, wishing Donald Trump happiness and peace. And so, I try to pick the people that I really dislike the most in my life.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell you what, man, that last one is so hard. So people listening, think about shutting your eyes and for quite some period of time, wishing your worst enemy happiness and being free from suffering. And when you're doing it, it's super hard. But I'll tell you what, man, when you really feel the effects of that meditation, at least for me, Lori, is after you're done. Everything is just a little bit calmer. Everything is just the fire is just tamped down a little bit. And so have you ever done like a metta or a loving kindness meditation?
Yeah, I've done all kinds of meditations and I mix them up all the time so I don't get bored.
How did you get into meditation? Like what's the origin
I will
story
tell
there?
you that. But first, I just wanted to mention, because you were saying, because as it relates to the metta loving kindness meditations, that I have a coach that I'm working with now on clearing chakras and energy and things like that for myself. And last week's session, she said, I wrote it down, it's next to my computer right here. If you can't see God everywhere, you can't see God anywhere. And you can change the word God, universe,
Beautiful.
higher power, whatever works for you.
Beautiful.
If you can't love everything, you can't love anything.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So that is to your point about using loving kindness meditations to send loving energy to people you love, people you have a neutral connection with, and people you have a challenging relationship with. That's why. That's exactly what you're doing. You're seeing God in everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So how did you first get in? And I'll tell you, and I think Ben will tell you this. I got into meditation probably going on 15 years ago, and I started really pitching it to Ben strongly. And Ben has become a huge proponent of both meditation and mindfulness training your mind generally. So Ben and I have kind of been on this journey a little bit together. But by the way, the reason I started meditation is because I was having panic attacks. And I got lucky and read a book called 5% Happier by Dan Brown, who had a panic attack on national TV.
Yep.
He was like an NBC correspondent.
Yep.
I read this book about meditation, and that opened the door to all this other stuff. And so that's kind of my origin story. I did it because I felt like I needed something to stop these damn panic attacks. And by the way, the meditation was essentially 100% effective. I didn't need any medication or drugs or anything like that. Meditation was really good for me for that particular thing. But what's your origin story when it comes to meditation?
Yeah. And it's Dan Harris. You said Dan Brown.
Dan Harris, that's right.
Dan Brown's the author, but Dan Harris wrote 10% Happier.
That's right.
Yeah. My meditation story starts when I was 10 years old. My mom took my brother and me to a meditation course. And so I had that as a foundation from childhood. However, I didn't use it. So she introduced me, maybe we practiced for a year, so I was 11, getting into 12. Then you're like, nothing my parents said makes any sense anymore. I'm not listening. I'm going to I know better. I'm going to do my own thing. Right. So then I didn't use it for another like 35 years. I knew the benefits because I learned it when I was 10. I knew the benefits. When I started my first business, a baking company, I looked at what are some of the most successful business leaders in the world doing? What do they have in common? And a majority of them practice meditation.
Yeah.
And attribute their success to the fact that they practice meditation.
Yeah.
So I knew the benefits, but I just I couldn't get myself to do it consistently. So I would do it I'd go into it and I'd do it for like a couple of days, and then I'd skip a few years and then I'd come back. And I just had this back and forth. After my mom passed away, I actually read another book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani. Vishen's the founder of Mind Valley. I don't know if you're familiar with the company. Self-development company, personal development company, Mind Valley.
Yeah.
Vishen talks in his book about how meditation affected his life and helped him be a better business person. And he also has created what he calls the 6-phase meditation. There's a 15-minute and a 20-minute version of it. I prefer the 20-minute version. The 15 one feels a little rushed, but I started doing that meditation. So the interesting thing is that, come to find out, the meditation method that Vishen learned originally was the same one that I learned when I was 10. It's the Silva method. It's known as the Silva method. And Mind Valley actually has the rights, or I'm not sure what the relationship is, but if you want to learn how to use the Silva method, you go to Mind Valley and that's where you learn it now. Yeah. So that was my introduction to it and my background in it.
So what does your meditation practice look like now?
Now I tend to use pretty frequently. I use an app called Insight Timer.
I do too. I like that.
Okay. So Insight Timer, 100,000 meditations on there, all different kinds. You want guided, it's got guided. You want guided with music under it. You want just music. You want 10 minutes. You can search on however much time you have. If you want something, it's so many different parameters. I love it. 6-phase meditation is actually on there too, but it's not under Vishen's name. So I tend to use that. And then also I would just like put on music, some kind of healing frequency music, and just do my own meditation now. It doesn't have to be guided. I can just go into a meditative state and do my own visualization, meditation, if you will, or like whatever it is that I want to work on that day. And I typically do it in the morning so after I wake up, before I get into my day, to help me set the intention for my day, set the tone for my day. At this point, if I don't do a meditation in the morning, it's almost like leaving the house without brushing your teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And again, for people that are maybe thinking about meditation, or even people that have some hesitation because they think that maybe there's some religious connotations or some woo-woo stuff, we're not really talking about that at all. What we're talking about, at least when I say meditation, is just sitting quietly and watching the way your mind works, essentially. Yes. I think people have this notion. I had this notion. I'll never forget when I first started meditating. I first started meditating, I was doing it for 5 minutes, and it was like my mind would not shut the fuck up. It was like, shut up. I thought meditation would get my thoughts to stop, and that ain't what it is. Number one, and number two, the more you try to get your thoughts to stop, the louder they become. And so it's not about stopping your thoughts. It's not about any religious thing necessarily. What to me meditation is more about is just becoming comfortable with the way your own mind works, just like observing your mind. And so, for example, say you're angry about something. Meditation can give you just a little bit of distance to where, instead of being completely controlled by your anger, you can kind of watch it. And the more you watch your anger, the quicker it subsides. Like it's impossible if you're an angry person and you start meditating and thinking about it, it's impossible to stay angry.
Yeah. It's it's exactly that. And so I get this a lot because people are like, well, I'm not good at meditating because I can't quiet the thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
And not realizing that that is not what meditation is. Meditation is recognizing the thoughts as
Yeah.
they come through and watching them, observing them, allowing them, because we've all heard that what you resist persists.
Yeah.
So
That's
you're
right.
not resisting, you're allowing them, you're noticing like clouds floating through the sky, like cars passing on the road. Oh, look at that one. Oh, look at that one. And
Yeah.
just letting it go. And the more you practice meditation, there's a reason it's called a practice, right?
Yeah.
The better you get at it, the more space you get between those thoughts. So you're never really going to get to the point where your mind is just a complete blank slate.
That's
But
right.
you may get more time, you may get more space in between the thoughts. And what you're really doing is quieting your mind, calming it down, quiet, 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 which allows you to tap into your own inner truth.
Yeah.
What is that voice that's inside of you? You might want to call it intuition or whatever it is. What is it telling you? Because it's always speaking to you, but we're not always hearing it. We're so distracted.
Yeah.
Especially
that's right.
now in our society, we have so many outside voices trying to tell us what to do, how to think, what to believe. What do you believe? What is your truth, your inner voice? Nobody else can hear that except you.
Yeah. Well, that's a good transition, because after the cookie company, you had a rather dramatic career shift and life shift. And you talk about, so one of the services you provide in how would you describe your company? A consulting company? Or
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
kind of a cross between a consulting and coaching. Because
yeah.
I can say, people, I take on the term coach as I'm a transformative meditation coach. I was reluctant to take that term coach because everybody's a coach. And what the fuck does that
Yeah.
even mean? And,
Yeah.
but people didn't know how to describe me. So if they wanted to refer me or they wanted to share what I do with people, I didn't know how to say what I do. So fine, I'll take meditation coach.
Yeah.
But a coach kind of helps you figure out the stuff yourself. Like, well, what do you think? It's almost like a therapist.
Yeah.
What do you think? I also teach. I teach how to implement the concepts of gratitude into your life. And I teach tools and techniques and practices around gratitude and meditation. So in that way, I see it more as a consultant. It's both. It's kind of a hybrid.
And one of the things that you teach that really caught my eye was about identifying or finding your purpose. And
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about that, because I think, I think it's fair to say that most people would love to know, like, what's my purpose here?
Yep.
And what am I doing here? And a lot of people, me included, for a very long stretches of time, don't have a really good answer to that question. And so talk about identifying or finding your purpose. Like, what process do you go through with your clients to help them? First of all, what process did you go through to find your purpose, your current purpose? And then how do you walk clients through that?
It's an evolution. And a large part of the reason why I started this company and started going down this path was because I was having a text conversation with my cousin, and her oldest son was graduating college and she was feeling lost because what was her purpose anymore? He didn't need her in the same way. He's an adult. He's growing up. He's moving out. What was her purpose now? And a lot of people who are going through midlife transition, a midlife reevaluation, I much prefer those terms over some of the others that have been used, is this time when we are, parents are passing away, kids are growing up and moving out. We're maybe looking at a spouse going, we've been married for 20 years, but I don't even know if I like you anymore. Same thing with the job you may have been in or a career that you've been in for 20 or 25 years. Hey, is this really what I want to continue doing? Yeah. And asking this question. So what is my purpose? As if that it can be delivered like an Amazon package on your doorstep. And I don't think it can.
Yeah.
I've come to the conclusion that it's more a process of uncovering what brings you joy, what lights you up. And this also gets lost when you're spending, you're in your 20s, your 30s, you're maybe part of your 40s even, and you're doing things kind of almost on autopilot, or this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how life is. And not thinking about it, not intentionally creating a life.
Yeah.
And then you get to this point and you're like, okay, wait, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And so that's when you really start looking for what is my purpose. But finding what your purpose is has to do with taking action. So for one thing, getting quiet so that you can hear that inner voice, because it's in there. What you need to be doing is in there.
Yep.
But you often can't hear it because you're not listening.
100%.
Or not listening closely enough. And then, one of the first things that I do in my program is I take people through an exercise of what are your values, and examining what are your values and how are you making decisions based on those values. Because a lot of times people haven't tapped into what do they value, and are those values reflected in how they're living their life?
Yeah. Nice. I've, like maybe some people, I don't know how many people are in this situation, but, and I've said this quite a bit publicly too, until recently. And when I say recently, I mean, last 5, 6, 7 years, I thought the whole thing was about what I could do for myself. And that's what we're here for. What can I do for myself professionally, personally, all that stuff. And it took me quite some time into my mid 40s to realize that that's not what we're here for. Your life will not be judged by what you do for yourself. Your life will be judged by the effect and impact you have on other people. And so I've been, I have 3 kids, all teenagers, 2 boys and a girl. And, I have discussions with them, and, I say, I don't know what the purpose of life is, but I know serving others seems like a pretty worthy purpose to me. And the other thing I tell my kids is, I don't know what the purpose of life is, but, getting the most out of your God-given talent, whatever you've been given in life, getting the most out of your talents is a pretty good North Star. That's a pretty good compass and will lead you in the right direction. And so my personal purpose over the last 5 or 6 years has shifted dramatically from what can I do for myself to like, how can I help other people, number one, and number two, how can I use whatever talents I've been given, whatever talents I've developed, how can I maximize those? How can I use those talents for the best possible good? So talk a little bit about your purpose, Lori. Like what's your current purpose?
Yeah, both of those things that you're talking about bring you joy.
Absolutely.
When you are doing those things, you feel joy.
Yeah. And it's not, and by the way, it's not, to me, you're using the word joy, which I think is important and we flag. It's not a temporary state of happiness. It's not like when you drink a few glasses of wine, you feel happy. Like joy is a deeper concept than happiness. Joy is like, you feel it deeper in your bones, I guess, is the way I'll talk about it. So I think it's fair to say you're using the word joy for a reason, right?
Yeah. Right. Because exactly what you said, like it being in this state of joy. And because I feel that that's our purpose, is to find our joy.
Yeah.
What brings you joy, and using your talents and being of service is different from what those things look like are different for everybody. But I feel like everybody's ultimate purpose is to find what lights them up and brings them joy.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's been a journey. I love talking about marketing. I love that we started our conversation talking about marketing, and it's not what I do professionally. Like I'm not out there helping other businesses with their marketing, although, man, that keeps coming up. Like, should I mean,
plausible
I do
side
that?
business. Yeah.
I know, right? I need a side gig. No, I don't.
Yeah.
But I do love that lights me up. Talking about gratitude and meditation, the same thing, like how helping people find that calm and grounded place in their life to help them understand that you don't have to live hair on fire, anxious, uptight all the time. Because I'm just, here's what really lights me up about what I'm doing is imagine what the world could be like if everybody came from a place of calm and groundedness.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is what that's what I get so excited about.
Yeah.
The more people I can help get to that place. And there's so many people who say they want that peace of mind, but they really don't want to do the work to get there. And it's not super hard work. It's work, but it is work. Anything that's worth doing is going to take some effort. So some people don't want to do that work. Some people prefer to live in that world. They love the drama. So they say they don't, but they do. Those are not my people. The people I love to work with are the ones who truly, like you said, you were tired of living in anxiety and you were looking for a way out. So I would just say to your listeners, first of all, understand there is a way. There is a way to live differently, to live peacefully. None of this changes your circumstances. It changes how you respond to it.
That's right.
All you can do is change yourself. You can't change the people around you, but you can change yourself. And when you change, they can change in response to you or how you see them. Because as we said earlier, when you start practicing gratitude, how you see the world changes. Everything changes.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I think this is really, really important for people to understand that don't have a mindfulness practice or meditation practice. What you just said is 100% dead on. So again, it's not that you don't have anxious thoughts. It's not that you don't think the same things that maybe you've thought before. It's that you recognize it for what it is. And
right.
So for instance, both of my boys, I have a boy going off to college and I have one that's going to be a junior in high school, have been athletes since they were very young. And my wife and I are like that. Athletics is a big deal in our house. And there's been some times, Lori, where for whatever reason, they maybe didn't get the starting position or they didn't get what they wanted, or we didn't know whether they were going to make a particular team. And man, my mind is just spinning, like just thinking about, oh, if he doesn't make this team, then he's not going to play sports, and then he's going to start drinking beer, and then he's going to become a loser. You know, it's like, and 10 years ago, when I would have those kind of thoughts, 10, 15 years ago, they would completely control me. And I wouldn't even recognize what was going on. Now, and this is the important point, I still have those thoughts. It's not that those thoughts go away. Meditation doesn't wipe out negative thoughts or anxious thoughts. It's just when those thoughts come on, I can literally go, hey, isn't that funny? Here come those stupid thoughts again. Like
right.
my wife and I, my son just got into Texas A&M, which was where she went, I went, my dad, my grandfather. Very hard to get into now. He gets in. My wife and I are joking. We look at each other. We're like, okay, what's the next thing we need to worry about? It's almost like you always have something you need to worry about. But I'll tell you, Lori, something that gives me great joy is talking to people like you and talking about the things we're talking about. And so like I found this podcast and people are like, man, you got a full-time job as a lawyer, you run this business, why are you doing this podcast? And to be completely honest, if I had to say one reason, it's because I get to meet people like you and talk about these awesome things that we've been talking about. And so, Lori, I literally, I could sit here and talk to you, I'm sure, for an hour or two, but I know you don't have forever. So I want to be respectful of your time. Before we get off the podcast, I want you to talk a little bit about the 3 services you provide at Zen Rabbit. There's something you called Fuck Being Fine, or the Fuck Being Fine experience. You do customized meditations, and you also do speaking. So talk a little bit, like if people want to find you on the internet or on social media, where they find you, and then talk a little bit about those 3 services you provide.
Thanks. Yeah. So my company is called Zen Rabbit. And so the website is zenrabbit.com. And I have the Fuck Being Fine program, which is where it's private client or small group programs. And I also go in and teach that at companies too, corporate. But I take people through what I call the trilogy for success. And that trilogy is gratitude, connections, and courage. And under connections is most importantly, I believe, that connection to yourself. And within that connection to yourself, that connection to your higher power as well. That's where the meditation piece comes in. And for people going through that program, the customized gratitude meditations that you mentioned are included when they do the Fuck Being Fine program. They get a customized gratitude meditation. The customized gratitude meditations are also available separately. And those they're so powerful. It's almost like it was crazy how I stumbled upon it, but this is what happens when you get into these, when you use meditation, you practice gratitude, all of these synchronicities and what might be called coincidences start happening. And that's what happened. That's how customized gratitude meditations came to be a thing. I had created a 6-minute gratitude meditation for a 5-day gratitude experience I did on Facebook back in June of 2020. And from that came, hey, can you customize this for me? And that grew into, hey, I created this product now for people to get a customized gratitude meditation.
Nice.
And the 6-minute meditation is available on my website. If you go, you'll get a pop-up and it'll say, hey, you want to get this 6-minute meditation. So you can just get that for free and see what it's about. If you're just getting started in meditation, it's a great place to 6 minutes. I mean, come on, who doesn't have 6 minutes? So the meditations and then the speaking, I'm on stages all the time. I love having a microphone and talking because I love sharing the energy of the audience. That's really what it is that energy that we're sharing right now in our conversation, and talking about the power of gratitude, the power of how meditation can change your life. And that whole thing, I host a podcast too called Fine is a 4-letter word. And that a lot of times is the title of my speaking presentations as well. Because, we say everything's fine but it's not fine. We just don't want to admit that it's not fine. Yeah. So talking about those experiences and stories of saying everything's fine when it's really not fine.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard this saying before. You're talking about 6 minutes not being that long. The first time I meditated for 5 minutes, it felt like an eternity.
Yeah.
I could not believe how long. Now I can go for 45 minutes, an hour if I need to, but there's a saying in the meditation circles, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, you need to meditate for 30 minutes. Like,
right.
If you're listening to this show, okay, everybody that's listening, listen very carefully. If you're telling yourself, I just don't have time, you are precisely the person that needs to have a meditation practice. That meditation is perfect for you.
Yes. And I would encourage you, set up a free call with me. I'm not, just a value-based call, and you can do that through the website. But the thing about meditation is it's not an expenditure of time, it's an investment. Because if you spend, let's say 10 minutes in meditation and you are increasing your ability to focus, something that might have taken you 2 hours would now take you an hour. You just bought yourself 50 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a practical reason why meditation is so powerful. Well, Lori, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. The thing that I love the most about the guests that I have on this show is they're universally positive people. I started this podcast during quarantine because I just saw this negative stuff constantly on the internet, social media. And I was like, man, I want to get some positivity out in the world. And I couldn't have picked a better guest today to talk to about gratitude, meditation, positivity. Like talking to people like you, when I'm done with this phone call, like I'm energized right now.
Yeah.
where, and I know people will know what I'm talking about. There's people you talk to that suck your energy away. I
Energy
actually like
vampires.
energy vampires. Like I got little goosebumps sometimes during the podcast when you said a few things, because you just speak to my heart so directly. And now you got me fired up. I almost want to go meditate right now, but anyway, it really has been a pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing, Lori. You're a beautiful person, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you before too long.
Thanks so much for having me on your show, Brian.
Awesome.